Because the company will go public, dinosaurs like you are blocking the way, Manager Smith said with a smirk, handing me my sudden walking papers. She dumped her workload on her subordinates, quashed any dissent, and if she took a dislike to someone, she would not hesitate to fire them on the spot. Facing the unrepentant Manager Smith, I responded calmly, "Well, good luck with that. The hard work is supposed to be on you." Turning my back on Manager Smith, who clearly didn't grasp the gravity of the situation, I drafted my resignation then and there, submitted it, and left the office. Days later, Manager Smith barged into my office, now that I'm an entrepreneur, yelling, "Michael, get back to the office with me right now and fix the internal system." Right off the bat, Manager Smith shouted that I was on the phone, but after hanging up, she alleged that the newly implemented system had encountered issues and crashed. Now she demands that I restore the system since I was previously in charge. Hurry up and get it back to how it was. Manager Smith commanded me, to which I honestly replied, "That's exactly what I did." I simply reverted it to the old system and undid the changes I had made to the new system. "What do you mean? Explain yourself." Expecting to see the clueless manager's surprised face, I began to tell them everything. My name is Michael Johnson, a completely nothing special 56-year-old employee. I took early retirement at 55 after working for over 30 years at a company in the city center since high school graduation. Now I have moved back to the countryside and regained employment at a local company. I returned to my family's home because my father, who lived alone in the countryside, fell, and I felt obliged to assist him in his daily life. Realizing how the strong man who raised me single-handedly had aged, I became worried. Around the same time, my company was struggling financially and was looking for early retirees, so I decided to take the plunge and retire. I also thought it was a good opportunity to dive into my hobby of studying computers, using my knowledge and experience to fulfill my longtime dream of starting my own business. Being able to turn a hobby into a career is a joy in itself, and I plan to live modestly with my father until things take off. Since my younger days spent working in factories and on OBS sites, I've nurtured a fascination with computers in my spare time. Eventually dabbling in programming and creating things as a hobby, this sensation of gradually being able to do things I couldn't before was immensely satisfying, and I found myself increasingly immersed in my computer hobby. Coming from a post-single-parent family, higher education was never in the cards for me, but this hobby made me realize for the first time how much I actually enjoyed learning. While working my day job, I started creating websites for acquaintances and developing tools to improve business efficiency, gaining confidence that my knowledge was valuable, and considering making this work my career. When I decided to retire early, I mentioned to my high school friend, Arthur Garcia, my desire to turn my hobby into a job. Unexpectedly, this led to an offer for a new job back home. "Michael, would you be interested in joining our company's information systems department?" Arthur asked. He ran a small business under the name of Garcia Fisheries, specializing in the processing and sale of locally caught seafood. Arthur, the founder and first CEO, had recently stepped down from his position, allowing his son James to take over as the next CEO. Being able to leverage what I've learned through self-study is a dream come true. However, I didn't enter the IT industry, nor do I have any specialized knowledge in information technology, as I got a job right after graduating from high school. Therefore, I initially turned down the offer. "I know you're serious and don't want to do a half-hearted job, but my company currently needs someone who is knowledgeable in it and can think flexibly. You're trustworthy and reliable, Michael. That's why I really need your help. The aging workforce is advancing, and I can sense Arthur's sincere wish to somehow support the company, which is becoming outdated. CEO James, though young in his 30s and full of enthusiasm and flexibility, will need time to be respected in a company where the seniority system is deeply ingrained. Arthur wants me to support the CEO. I can't promise that I'll be able to meet your expectations, Arthur, Mr. Chairman, but if I'm good enough for you, I'll help out, I said, knowing my childhood friend, who has been striving since our younger days to start a business closely tied to our community and support our hometown. I decided to accept his earnest request. Upon joining Garcia Fisheries, I was immediately assigned to the Information Systems Department and started learning the job from scratch. However, the content of the job was largely different from what I had anticipated. The Information Systems Department was only so in name, with a notable amount of work, such as document management, being done in an analog fashion. In fact, it felt like other departments used computers for their tasks more than ours did. Our area was still to the brim with paper documents. Being a relatively new and small department with few people, it lacked a bit of liveliness, or so it seemed to me. After exchanging greetings and getting a rundown of the tasks, I approached Manager Smith, who would be my boss. In her 40s, she had recently become the department head, and there were talks that she was on the fast track to climb the corporate ladder. "Nice to meet you, ma'am. I'm Michael Johnson. I'll be working with you," I said. There was no reply from Manager Smith. At first, she just stared at me for a moment before finally asking about my age. "Michael, how old are you?" I'm turning 56 this year." "I see. Remember, in the roles of superior and subordinate, age doesn't matter. As a newbie, make sure to learn diligently and follow my instructions. At your age, I know picking up new things can be a bit of a struggle." I was taken aback by the condescending smile Manager Smith gave me. I'd kept it a secret that I was an old acquaintance of the chairman and CEO of Garcia Fisheries. I did this because I thought any special treatment would be a hindrance to working as a newbie. Of course, I plan to learn everything a newbie should, regardless of age. Just because Manager Smith is younger doesn't mean it's okay for me to act poorly. It's also true that a superior shouldn't look down on their subordinates just because they're older. Even though my first impression of Manager Smith wasn't great, I figured every company has people you don't click with, so I tried not to dwell on it too much. However, as I started working, it became clear that the department's atmosphere wasn't great, possibly due to Manager Smith's attitude. Despite the company having a seniority-based culture, Manager Smith was a person who put undue pressure on others based on their position or age and was not open to listening to others. Employees are gears in the company machine. It's important to work without disrupting the harmony. Since you are young, respect your elders and do your job as told before you start using your shallow wisdom. I didn't ask for your opinion. I told you my orders are absolute, didn't I? I often heard these words. She tells younger employees to respect their elders and reminds older employees about the hierarchy between superiors and subordinates. Since she assumed the role of manager, the employees in the Information Systems Department have been steadily decreasing. Some have requested transfers to other departments, while others have chosen to leave their jobs, leading to a constant understaffing issue. Although the transactions in this department are routine and voluminous, it didn't take too long to grasp the basic tasks. In short, this department manages and oversees all critical company information. The few digital data that exist are backed up automatically, leaving us primarily dealing with non-digital paper materials. No one is willing to update the internal systems. They only maintain what already exists periodically. Most of the tasks assigned to me as a newbie involve sorting and filing paper materials collected from various departments. Additionally, I was responsible for teaching the basics of computer operation to older employees who were not familiar with PCs and serving as a help desk. I had heard that the fisheries industry was slow to adopt it, especially in community-focused companies far from urban centers where there is a severe shortage of IT professionals. Initially, the reality of it all took me by surprise. The work was more analog than I had expected, with many tasks progressing in old-fashioned ways. The few systems adopted within the company were clunky and very difficult to use. Because of this, many employees had a strong aversion to using the internal systems, leading to a failure in adopting digitalization and paperless processes. As a result, we often reverted back to managing things on paper or managing them both ways, doubling the workload. The initial costs of moving to it not only were recovered, but managing paper also involved costs for storage space. This made the reasons Arthur mentioned for being troubled very clear to me. As I became more familiar with the work, it became clear which areas needed improvement, and I began proposing ways to simplify the work system. This file contains information collected and compiled from various departments. However, manual handling consumes a significant amount of time, doesn't it? On review, I found that these data are well managed by our internal system. Therefore, I humbly suggest eliminating the paper version. When I suggested this, Manager Smith frowned. What if we lost the data on the computer? Not everyone feels confident with the system, so relying on paperwork is the safest option. Considering you're a newbie, just follow my instructions rather than taking on tasks independently. You're not yet in the position to take full responsibility. Simply follow the instructions you were given. But the data is already being backed up automatically and controlled by the internal system, I tried to explain. Maintaining paper copies appears inefficient. Regarding system adoption, we can offer in-user support given the user count. As for your data loss concerns, we could review system security for the future. We've been managing just fine with the current method. Why can't you see there's no need to change? She snapped. With that, she dismissed my suggestions without giving them any proper consideration. Manager Smith turned out to be more conservative than I initially believed, stubbornly resistant to new technologies, and staunchly in favor of analog methods. One reason for this seemed to be her own lack of illiteracy, but she wasn't the type to humbly seek guidance because she didn't understand. To me, it appeared that her excessive caution towards things she didn't understand was generating a lot of waste. Yet Manager Smith rejected all my proposals. According to what I heard from colleagues in the department, she was appointed as a department head not necessarily because of her expertise in it, but rather due to her promotion based on seniority. When the position became vacant, she had performed well in sales in the past and was valued for her wide network inside and outside the company, her communication skills, and her presentation abilities. However, there were rumors circulating that she would often delegate tasks to others and take credit for their accomplishments, resorting to any means necessary. Indeed, in the Information Systems Department, there had been several instances where she unilaterally assigned work to me and other employees. The department had become entirely her domain, and those who dared to voice opinions found themselves burdened with additional work, leaving them too occupied with daily tasks to speak up. The lack of vitality I felt on the first day might have had its roots in these issues. Because all opposition or alternative proposals were rejected, it had become a very difficult environment to change anything. Despite being responsible for the company's information systems, the department's reluctance to embrace digitalization and new technologies felt like an abandonment of its role. I started to ponder how to navigate this challenging environment and whether there was a way to bring about the necessary changes. How I could fulfill my duties effectively Realizing that direct proposals were getting nowhere, I decided to change my approach. Wanting to shift the company's digital stance, I began creating a new system in my spare time at work, thinking that if I could develop a user-friendly internal system, more employees might start using it, potentially overcoming their reluctance. Eventually, after much time and effort, I completed a system that was intuitive and closely resembled the paper-based processes. I informed the CEO and chairman about it, suggesting a trial implementation without disclosing my identity, to which they agreed. Not only did I receive high praise from the CEO and chairman, but also from employees who used the system, commending its groundbreaking nature. Believing that other companies in the fisheries industry would be eager to adopt it, I discussed patenting the system with the CEO. Given that Garsha Fisheries lacked a department specializing in intellectual property, and the system was developed by me personally during my free time, it was decided that the patent would be registered under my name rather than the company's. Since then, I've pondered the idea that if we could develop systems that not only complement our existing ones, but also simplify tasks and address issues, employees might come to appreciate the convenience of digitalization and become less resistant to it. To accelerate our company's transformation, I personally approached the CEO and chairman to propose an investigation into any inefficient processes or understaffed tasks. They not only agreed, but also assisted by collecting feedback through an internal survey on how to improve our operations, ensuring anonymity for both the Information Systems Department and myself. With their support, I was able to steadily prepare and implement new systems, despite being overwhelmed with daily tasks. Consequently, the introduction of several new systems resulted in significant improvements across various areas, including our production lines. Although I couldn't alter my job description, I succeeded in creating systems, obtaining patents for them individually, and gradually enhancing Garsha Fisheries operations. After a busy year, Manager Smith stormed into my workstation, furious. "Are you slacking off, sneaking around on the computer? Why are you doing this when the filing for this quarter's contracts isn't finished?" she demanded. She didn't approve of me working on tasks other than those she had assigned and criticized me for spending too much time on the computer. Intent on not neglecting my daily duties, I presented her with the completed files of documents. "I'm on top of my work. I'm just using my breaks and any spare time to do some research," I explained. "If you have that much free time, didn't you think to help out your coworkers? If you're so free, get this job done by today too," she snapped, piling tasks high on the desk. I was bewildered. All of this by today? Lately, the workload Manager Smith pushed onto me was already more than enough, leaving me shorthanded and clearly targeted. I often ended up working overtime on the tasks dumped on me. If you were slacking off, you can do it right. What's the use of an old-timer who doesn't understand computers doing research? It's a waste of time, she taunted. Her words infuriated me. It felt like she was dismissing everything I was passionate about and my hobbies as well. I was shocked. Just because Manager Smith doesn't know much about computers doesn't mean all older people are the same. It's an unfair prejudice and a terrible thing to say. I'm not playing around, and I believe knowledge about computers isn't related to age. Anyone can become efficient with the right attitude to learn at any age. "Shall I teach you, Manager Smith?" I offered. At that, her face turned red, and she raised her voice. "What did you say? I'm your manager. Are you trying to teach me? There's nothing for me to learn from an old newbie like you." I believe there's always something to learn from anyone, regardless of age or position, but she clearly doesn't share that sentiment.